It's our privilege to welcome the man of diplomacy, Shri T.P. Srinivasan, former ambassador to the US, to enlighten us with his thoughts.
Thank you very much, Christina. Normally, she calls me at the middle of the night. 10:30 is a recording prayer for me. So they keep me awake. Thank you. Mr. Minister, Sri I.B. Eden, Sri Thekampuram, and of course, the captain of today, Sri Srikandan Nair. When Mr. Srikandan Nair invited me to come here, I told him that I see no justification for me to be at a business conclave. But I shall come just to support you. So that's why I'm here. Because he is my television guru, you may not know that. 20 years ago when I came to Asianet for the first time, he is the one who took me around Asianet, introduced me to such talented journalists in Asianet. And he has moved much higher and further, but we still continue to be friends. Then I was wondering whether I can contribute some to this discussion. Then it occurred to me that perhaps no business is possible without understanding the geopolitics of the world. And having dealt with geopolitics for more than 40 years, perhaps I could try and tell you what is the kind of world that is awaiting you in business. I'm sure you're all doing these studies. I'm sure lots of books have been written as to what the next century will mean for us. But if you look at the world today, you find a few phenomena which I think you should take into account. The most important thing is today the world is divided into two. There are only two categories of people in this world. One category of people who are trying to do something before 20th of January when Mr. Trump takes over. And the other group of countries and nations are trying to jump in and do something before Trump takes over. And this is really the prospect. That's what we have to look at. How this is going to change with this most expected, most enticing, at the same time, most mysterious new president of the United States will do to geopolitics. And what are the things that he has to deal with? If you look at the world today, particularly of the 2024, you will see that the future is not bright. In fact, somebody was asked, can you tell me in one word what the world is like? He said, good. Then the same person was asked, can you tell me in two words what the world would be like? He said, no good. So you can have both these opinions, but the no good opinion prevails. But there is something very fascinating that I have observed. The world is very concerned about what President Trump would do for the future. The only country in the world which has no anxiety about it, at least expressed anxiety, is India. For several reasons. We have seen him as president before. We have seen the Modi-Trump equation. And we both have to face the biggest threat to India, which is China. So in all these respects, I think India is one country which is looking at President Trump with trepidation, at the same time with expectation. So that is one good point, since the US is going to rule the world for some more time. This is an important aspect we have to bear in mind. The business should feel comfortable that we will have a good relationship with the United States, whatever may be his other aspects. He wants to buy Greenland, he wants to take back Panama Canal, and he wants to make Canada into the 51st state of the United States. These are all frightening thoughts. But at the same time, we in India feel somewhat comfortable. But what are the problems that we are facing, and what is it that we expect him to do? Everybody expects him to do what he has promised us to do. that is 24 hours after he takes over, 2 wars will end: the Ukraine-Russian war and the Palestine-Israel war. I do not know on what basis he has given us this promise. This is something we look forward to. Because wars, if you take wars and armed conflicts into account, 2024 was the worst in history. I do not know whether we have noticed it. If you look at the Stockholm Institute of Peace, they say today there are 59 wars raging in the world. Will you be able to name them? That is the kind of situation. Today the war is taking place actively, not only in Russia and Ukraine, not only in Palestine, not only in Syria, but also many, many countries of the world. South Sudan, or Ethiopia, or Haiti, or Azerbaijan. These are all countries which are at war. And what is the damage that this war is causing? So today it is considered that 4.6% of the world is infected with conflicts. 4.6% of the global territory is under war, which is two times the size of India. So the complexity of that and the need to end conflict is absolutely essential. And why is it that like this in 21st century? If you look at the history of the world and the history of conflicts, you will find that in every time, even during the Cold War, ceasefire should be possible, negotiations would be possible, peacekeeping operations would be possible. And these are the things that you have in the Charter, United Nations Charter. So the fundamental reason for this serious change in the world is the fact that the United Nations is not operational. The system, the scheme that we developed in 1945 has come to exist. And in that situation, we are all waiting that a new world order will emerge. And in the new world order, we would all like to have an important role to play. As a result, the United Nations has become completely paralyzed. And the reason we know the fundamental flaw of the United Nations Charter is the veto. The veto was given to these permanent members because they have the special responsibility to look after the security of the world. It was not a favor to them. It was a responsibility but given to them. But the first time in history, you find a permanent member with a veto is waging a war against another member state. Yet another permanent member is supporting Israel in all the conflicts that they are engaged in. So the United Nations is over, and we need to have a new world order. And we are all anxious to play a role in that, and therefore we are all watching the situation without take any concrete action. So even if we end the war, the rebuilding of the world will be much more complex and expensive. It has been considered, it has been calculated that the rebuilding of Ukraine will cost $411 billion US dollars. Where is it going to come from? Then you can think about all the other problems that we have. Okay, I must stop because of the minister is already waiting. Just to conclude, the whole situation is in such a flux that all the calculations or all the arrangements that we have made in 1945 have not become. So the whole system we need to see, and that exactly is the problem. So is then the world hopeless? For that you have to go back to Charles Dickens' novel, where there is a gentleman called Mr. Micawber, whom you may remember. In any conflict, any problem, anything happens, he struggles very hard, and finally he looks up to the sky and says, something will turn up. And that is what gives us hope. In spite of all this, hopefully like Micawber we can say, something will turn up, and let us hope it will be for the best of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, T.P. Srinivasan sir. Thank you very much for your words.